The sun was just beginning to rise over Lake Evermere, casting a golden glow across the calm waters. A light mist hung low over the surface, making the lake look like something out of a dream. The air smelled fresh and clean, filled with the earthy scent of damp leaves and pine needles. It was one of those mornings where everything felt peaceful, touched by the worries of the world. Sarah Dawson loved mornings like this. She lived in Willowbrook, a small town nestled near the edge of the lake. Most people knew her as someone who couldn't sit still for long, always hiking, fishing, or exploring the woods that surrounded the area. Today, she had woken up early, packed a thermos of coffee, and set off on her usual trail through the forest. Her boots crunched softly against the gravel path as she walked, the sound blending with the chirping of birds overhead. As she approached a secluded cove along the lake's shoreline, Sarah noticed something unusual. At first, it looked like a bundle of fur caught in the reeds near the water's edge. But when she squinted, she realized it wasn't driftwood or debris was moving. Whatever it was, it seemed to be struggling. Curious and concerned, Sarah quickened her pace. As she got closer, her heart sank. There, partially submerged in the shallow water, lay what appeared to be a wolf pup. Its fur was drenched and matted, clinging to its tiny body as it thrashed weakly. But there was something strange about it, something that made Sarah pause for a moment. The fur shimmered faintly, almost like moonlight, reflecting off water in its eyes. They glowed softly, an eerie yet beautiful shade of blue-green dot. For a second, Sarah hesitated. Was this some kind of trick? Maybe it was a trick of the light playing games with her mind. Or worse, what if it wasn't safe? Wolves weren't exactly known for being friendly creatures. Still, the way the pup whimpered tugged at her heartstrings. It sounded so vulnerable, so desperate. She couldn't just leave it there. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped into the icy water. The cold bit at her legs, but she ignored it, focusing instead on reaching the pup. When she finally got close enough, she crouched down and gently scooped it into her arms. The creature flinched at first, letting out a soft yelp, but then went limp, too exhausted to fight back. Up close, Sarah could see even more details that didn't quite add up. Its fur wasn't normal. It sparkled faintly under the sunlight, shifting colors like oil on water. Those glowing eyes, they weren't natural either. They pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Despite all this, the pup felt warm. Against her chest, trembling slightly as it tried to catch its breath. "Okay, little guy," Sarah murmured softly, wrapping her jacket around him. "Let's get you somewhere safe." She carried the pup back to dry land and sat down on a nearby rock, holding him close. He was smaller than she expected, fitting easily in her lap. His breathing was shallow but steady, and after a few moments, he opened his eyes again. Those glowing orbs locked onto hers, and for a brief second, Sarah swore she saw intelligence staring back at her, not the wild gaze of an animal, but something deeper, almost human. "What are you?" she whispered aloud, though she didn't expect an answer. The pup tilted its head slightly, as if considering her question. Then, to her astonishment, it let out a series of soft chirps and whistles. It wasn't like any sound she'd ever heard from a wolf or any animal, for that matter. It was melodic, almost musical, and strangely comforting. Sarah smiled despite herself. "Well, aren't you full of surprises?" She stayed there for a while, drying him off as best she could with her scarf. By the time the pup seemed stable, enough to move, the sun had climbed higher in the sky. Sarah debated what to do next. Normally, finding an injured animal would mean calling animal control or taking it to a vet. But this wasn't a normal situation. This creature was clearly not from around here, and bringing it into town might cause panic. Instead, she decided to take it home. Her cabin was secluded, tucked away in the woods where no one would stumble upon them accidentally. Besides, she figured, whoever or whatever this pup was, he needed help. And she couldn't shake the feeling that saving him had been more than just coincidence. As she walked back along the trail, the pup resting snugly in her arms, Sarah's mind raced with questions. Where had he come from? What was he doing here? And most importantly, why had he ended up drowning in the lake? By the time she reached her cabin, The pup had fallen asleep, his body rising and falling gently with each breath. Sarah placed him carefully on a blanket by the fireplace, watching as the warmth slowly dried his fur. For now, he seemed okay, but she knew this was only the beginning of something much bigger. Little did she know. Her decision to save this mysterious creature would set off a chain of events that would change not only her life, but the lives of everyone in Willowbrook. The next few days passed in a blur for Sarah Dawson. Her quiet, predictable life had been turned upside down by the strange pup she'd rescued from Lake Evermere. The creature, whatever it was unlike anything she'd ever encountered. Its shimmering fur dried to a soft silver, and its glowing eyes continued to pulse faintly, even in the daylight. It didn't act like a normal wolf pup either. Instead of growling or snapping, it watched her with an almost human-like curiosity. Tilting its head and mimicking her movements, Sarah spent hours observing the pup, trying to figure out what made him tick. She named him Orion, after the constellation that twinkled brightly above them during their first night together. The name seemed fitting given how otherworldly he appeared. At first, she fed him warm milk and bits of cooked meat, but soon she noticed something odd. He barely ate. Occasionally, he would nibble at the food, but more often than not, he seemed content just being near her. Orion quickly became attached to Sarah, following her around the cabin like a shadow. He liked to sit close to her feet while she worked, on small chores, or curled up beside her when she read by the fire. His presence brought a sense of calm to the house, though Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than met the eye. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor, staring into the flames. Orion lay nearby, his glowing eyes fixed on her face. She reached out tentatively, running her fingers through his silky fur. To her surprise, he leaned into her touch, letting out a low, melodic hum that vibrated softly in the air. It wasn't quite a purr, but it was soothing all the same. "You're full of mysteries, aren't you?" Sarah murmured, smiling despite herself. Her peaceful moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. Startled, she glanced toward the entrance, then back at Orion. "Stay here," she whispered, though she doubted he understood. Grabbing a blanket, she draped it over him before heading to answer the knock. Standing outside was Mia Foster, one of Sarah's closest friends and a trusted member of the Willowbrook clan. Mia was known for her kindness and wisdom, often acting as a healer for those in need. Today, however, her expression was serious, her brow furrowed with concern. "Sarah, we need to talk," Mia said without preamble. Stepping inside before Sarah could respond, her sharp eyes scanned the room until they landed on the lump under the blanket by the fireplace. "Is that?" "Yes," Sarah admitted, closing the door behind her. "I found him near the lake. He was drowning." Mia approached cautiously, kneeling beside the bundle. Slowly, she pulled back the edge of the blanket, revealing Orion's glowing eyes and silvery fur. For a moment, she simply stared, her mouth slightly agape. Then, shaking her head as if to clear it, she looked up at Sarah. "This isn't a normal animal, is it?" Mia asked quietly. "No, it's not," Sarah replied, sitting down across from her friend. "I don't know what he is or why he's here, but I couldn't just leave him." Mia nodded thoughtfully, reaching out to touch Orion's fur. He sniffed her hand, then let out another soft hum, leaning into her palm. A small smile tugged at the corners of Mia's lips. "He seems gentle," she said. "But this changes things, Sarah. You know that, right?" "I do," Sarah admitted. "I don't have answers yet. All I know is that he needed help, and I gave it." Mia sighed, sitting back on her heels. Word has already spread about what happened. People are talking. Some are curious, others scared. Ethan's called a meeting tomorrow to discuss what to do. Ethan Brooks was the leader of the Willowbrook clan astern, practical man who valued tradition and caution above all else. If anyone would see Orion as a potential threat, it was him. "What do you think they'll decide?" Sarah asked, worry creeping into her voice. "I'm not sure," Mia admitted. "But you should prepare yourself. Not everyone will see this the way you do." The following morning, Sarah carried Orion to the meeting, spot a clearing beneath the old oak tree, where important decisions were traditionally made. The entire clan had gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity, fear, and skepticism. Whispers filled the air as Sarah stepped forward, cradling Orion protectively in her arms. Ethan stood at the center of the group, his arms crossed over his chest. His sharp gaze locked onto Sarah, then shifted to the glowing pup in her arms. "What all the fuss is about?" he asked, his tone laced with disbelief. "Yes," Sarah replied firmly. "His name is Orion. I found him drowning in the lake. Is harmless?" "Harmless," Ethan echoed, raising an eyebrow. "How can you be so sure? We don't know what this thing is or where it came from. It's not a thing, Sarah?" Snapped, surprising even herself with her sharp tone. "He's alive, intelligent, and he trusts me. That should count for something." Before Ethan could respond, Mia stepped forward, placing a calming hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Let's not jump to conclusions," she said diplomatically. "We don't have enough information yet. Maybe we should focus on understanding what Orion is before deciding what to do." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, though. Not everyone looked convinced. One man, Kyle Thompson, spoke up, his voice gruff. "Understanding takes time, and time is something we might not have. What if whatever sent him comes looking? Do we really want to attract attention from whatever's out there?" "That's exactly my point," Ethan interjected. "We live peacefully because we stay hidden. Bringing this creature into our midst risks everything." Sarah felt a surge of frustration bubbling inside her. Hidden from what? Until now, we've never had to worry about whatever's out there, but maybe that's changing. Maybe this is our chance to connect, to learn something new. Ethan shook his head, clearly unconvinced. Maybe it's reckless. We don't know what kind of trouble this could bring. The argument went on for what felt like hours, voices rising and falling as tempers flared.
Ow.
Sarah clutched Orion tightly, feeling his warmth against her chest. Despite the chaos around her, he remained calm, his glowing eyes scanning the crowd as if trying to understand. Finally, Mia raised her hands, calling for silence. "Enough," she said firmly. "Fighting won't solve anything. Let's take a vote. Those in favor of keeping Orion and learning more, raise your hands." Slowly, a few hands went up, including Mia's and several others who had been swayed by Sarah's passion. Ethan scowled, but didn't object outright. When the votes were counted, the decision was clear. Orion would stay for now. But the clan agreed to keep his existence a secret, hiding him away until they figured out what to do next. As the meeting dispersed, Sarah exhaled a shaky breath, relief washing over her. For now, Orion was safe, but she knew the battle wasn't over. There were still many questions left unanswered, and the answers might change everything. That night, as Sarah sat by the fire with Orion curled up beside her, she couldn't help but wonder what the future held. The clan's decision had bought them some time, but it also put pressure on her to prove that saving Orion had been the right choice. As she stroked his fur, listening to the soft hum emanating from his body, she whispered, "You're worth it, you know. Whatever happens, I won't let them take you away." Orion lifted his head, his glowing eyes locking onto hers. For a moment, Sarah swore she saw gratitude in his gaze, as if he understood every word she'd said. Smiling softly, she leaned back against the chair, watching the flames dance in the hearth. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the promise of change. Whether that change would be good or bad, only time would tell. The days that followed the clan's decision were filled with a mix of tension and wonder. Sarah kept Orion hidden in her cabin, away from prying eyes. But whispers about the mysterious creature continued to spread through Willowbrook. Some people were fascinated, others fearful, and a few outright hostile. Despite the agreement to keep him secret, it was clear that not everyone trusted Sarah's judgment or the strange pup she had brought into their lives. Ethan Brooks remained one of the most vocal opponents. He didn't openly challenge the clan's decision, but he made his feelings known in subtle ways. During gatherings, he would shoot disapproving glances at Sarah or mutter under his breath about unnatural things and reckless choices. His words carried weight, especially among the older members of the clan who valued tradition above all else. Slowly but surely, his skepticism began to influence others. Sarah tried to ignore the growing unease. She spent most of her time caring for Orion, learning more about him with each passing day. The bond between them deepened, becoming something almost impossible to explain. Orion seemed to understand her emotions, reacting to her moods with uncanny accuracy. When she laughed, he let out soft chirps that sounded like music. When she was upset, he pressed himself closer to her, as if trying to offer comfort. It wasn't just a connection, it was a partnership, built on trust and mutual understanding. One afternoon, while Sarah was chopping firewood outside her cabin, Orion wandered into the nearby woods. At first, she didn't notice he often explored the area around the house, staying within sight. But when several minutes passed and he didn't return, panic began to creep in. Dropping the axe, she called out his name, her voice echoing through the trees. "Orion, where are you?" Her heart raced as she ventured deeper into the forest, scanning the shadows for any sign of him.
I'll wait.
The woods were usually quiet and peaceful, but today they felt different, oppressive, almost menacing. Every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs made her jump. What if something had happened to him? What if someone had found him? Just as she was about to turn back and rally help from the clan, she heard a faint hum, melodic and familiar. Following the sound, she pushed through a cluster of bushes and found Orion standing in a small clearing. His glowing eyes were fixed on something ahead, his body tense but not afraid. Curious, Sarah stepped forward, peering over his shoulder. What she saw took her breath away. In the center of the clearing stood an enormous tree, its trunk gnarled and ancient. Its branches stretched high into the sky, twisting like skeletal fingers. But what caught Sarah's attention was the way light seemed to dance across its surface, not sunlight, but a soft, pulsating glow similar to Orion's markings. Tiny symbols flickered along the bark, shifting and rearranging themselves in patterns too complex to follow. It was beautiful and utterly alien. Sarah crouched beside Orion, placing a hand on his back. "Did you lead me here?" she asked softly. Orion turned to look at her, his head tilting slightly. Then, without warning, he stepped closer to the tree and pressed his paw against the glowing bark. The moment he touched it, the symbols flared brightly, bathing the entire clearing in radiant light. Sarah shielded her eyes, squinting against the brilliance. When the glow finally dimmed, she lowered her arm and gasped. The tree now displayed a series of images, projected onto the air like a hologram. They showed star systems, planets, and strange landscapes unlike anything on Earth. In the midst of these scenes stood creatures, some humanoid, others completely foreign, all connected by threads of light that wove through the galaxy. At the center of it all was a figure resembling Orion, surrounded by glowing lines that pulsed rhythmically, much like his own heartbeat. "What is this?" Sarah whispered, awestruck. Orion let out a low hum, his tail wagging gently. He couldn't speak. His actions conveyed a sense of pride, as if he wanted her to see this, to understand. For hours, Sarah studied the holographic display, committing every detail to memory. She realized that Orion wasn't just a lost animal. He was part of something far greater. These images told a story, one of exploration, connection, and unity. And somehow, inexplicably, Willowbrook and, perhaps even Earth itself, was tied to it. When Sarah returned home later that evening, her mind was racing. She knew she couldn't keep this discovery to herself if the clan was going to accept Orion. They needed to understand why he was here and what he represented. That night, she sought out Mia Foster, hoping to share what she had seen. Mia listened intently as Sarah recounted her experience in the clearing, her expression shifting from surprise to awe. "This changes everything," she said when Sarah finished. "If Orion really is part of something bigger, if he's meant to connect us to other worlds, then we can't turn our backs on him." "I know," Sarah replied, relief flooding her chest. "But convincing everyone else won't be easy. Ethan already thinks I'm reckless. Showing them this might only make things worse." Mira nodded thoughtfully. "We'll need proof. Something tangible that they can see for themselves." The two women devised a plan. Early the next morning, before anyone else was awake, they slipped into the woods together, heading toward the ancient tree. When they arrived, Mira stared at the glowing bark in amazement, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch it. Like before, the tree responded. It's projecting the same holographic images into the air. "This is incredible," Mira breathed, tears glistening in her eyes. "It's like a message, a gift." They decided to bring the clan to the clearing. Showing them the truth about Orion, it was risky. Ethan might accuse them of staging the whole thing, but they had no other choice. The clan deserved to know. That evening, Sarah and Myra gathered everyone in the meeting spot beneath the old oak tree. Tension hung thick in the air as Sarah explained what they had discovered. Predictably, Ethan was skeptical. A glowing tree? He scoffed. "You expect us to believe that?" "It's true," Sarah insisted. "Come see for yourselves." Reluctantly, the clan agreed to follow her into the woods. By the time they reached the clearing, the sun had set, casting the forest. In shadow, the tree stood tall and silent, its glow lighting up the darkness. When Orion approached and touched the bark, the holograms appeared once more, illuminating the faces of those watching. Gasps rippled through the crowd as they took in the images. Even Ethan fell silent, his arms dropping to his sides as he stared. At the display, for a long moment, no one spoke. Then slowly, Mia stepped forward. "This isn't just about Orion," she said, her voice steady. "This is about us, about our place in the universe. Maybe we've been alone for so long because we chose to stay hidden. But now, we have a chance to reach out, to learn, to grow. Isn't that worth taking a risk for?" Her words resonated. With many, though not everyone was convinced, Kyle Thompson, still wary, shook his head. "Even if this is real, how do we know it's safe? What if bringing attention to ourselves puts us in danger?" "We don't," Sarah admitted. "Doing nothing guarantees we'll never find out. Orion came here for a reason. Let's trust that reason." The debate continued late into the night, but eventually the clan reached a consensus. They would allow Orion to stay, using the knowledge from the tree to guide their next steps. Wasn't unanimous, Ethan, and a few others remained unconvinced, but it was enough. As the group dispersed, Sarah stayed behind, sitting beside Orion under the ancient tree. She wrapped an arm around him, feeling his warmth against her side. Above them, the stars twinkled brightly, reminding her of how vast and mysterious the universe truly was. "You're full of surprises," she murmured, scratching behind his ears. "And maybe that's exactly what we need." Orion let out a contented hum, leaning into her touch. Together they watched the holograms fade, leaving only the gentle glow of the tree behind. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Sarah knew one thing for certain: they wouldn't face them alone. The days following the clan's decision to embrace Orion and the mysterious tree brought a strange mix of hope and unease to Willowbrook. The revelation had sparked curiosity among many, but it also deepened the divide between those who saw opportunity and those who feared the unknown. Ethan Brooks, in particular, remained skeptical, a sharp gaze often lingering on Sarah whenever she walked through the village with Orion by her side, though he didn't openly challenge the clans. Agreement? His disapproval was clear. Sarah tried to focus on the positive. With Mia's help, she began documenting the symbols and images displayed by the ancient tree. Sketching them in a notebook and jotting down observations about their patterns, Orion seemed eager to assist, leading her back to the clearing each day and touching the glowing bark to activate the holograms. Together, they pieced together fragments of what appeared to be a map guide, pointing toward distant stars and planets. The more Sarah studied the tree, the more convinced she became that Orion wasn't just a random visitor. It was part of something deliberate, perhaps even sent here for a purpose. But what that purpose was, and whether humanity was ready for, it remained unclear. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah sat cross-legged beneath the tree, poring over her notes. Orion lay curled up beside her, his soft hum blending with the rustling leaves overhead. She glanced at him, smiling faintly. "You're full of secrets, aren't you?" she murmured. Orion tilted his head, his glowing eyes locking onto hers. For a moment, it felt like he understood every word. Suddenly, the air around them shifted. A low vibration rumbled through the ground, subtle at first, but growing stronger with each passing second. Startled, Sarah looked up, scanning the darkening sky. At first, she saw nothing unusual, just the familiar constellations twinkling above. Then, without warning, a streak of light shot across the heavens, followed by another and another. "What is that?" she whispered, rising to her feet. Orion stood beside her, his body tense but alert. His markings began to pulse faster, brighter, until they matched the rhythm of the vibrations shaking the earth. The lights in the sky converged, forming a massive shape that descended silently over Lake Evermere. It was a ship, an enormous, sleek vessel, unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, reflecting the moonlight in dazzling patterns. Panic surged through her chest. "Orion," she said urgently, grabbing his scruff. "We need to go." But before they could move, drones emerged from the ship, hovering silently above the lake. Their sleek, insect-like forms scanned the area with glowing red lenses, searching for something or someone. Sarah froze, realizing immediately what they were after. "They're looking for you," she breathed. Clutching Orion tightly, the drones turned toward the forest, their movements swift and precise. Without hesitation, Sarah bolted, weaving through the trees with Orion cradled against her chest. Branches whipped at her face, and roots tripped her feet, but she pushed forward, driven by sheer adrenaline. Behind her, the hum of the drones grew louder, closer. "Sarah," a voice called out. She glanced back to see Ethan and several others from the clan running after her, their faces etched with concern. "Keep moving," Ethan shouted. "We'll hold them off." "No," Sarah yelled, skidding to a stop. "There. Not after you, they're after Orion." Ethan hesitated, his expression torn between duty and fear. Finally, he nodded grimly. "Go, we'll distract them." Before she could argue further, Ethan and the others veered off, creating noise to draw the drones away. Grateful, but terrified, Sarah pressed on, her lungs burning as she ran deeper into the woods. Orion whimpered softly, sensing her distress, but stayed still in her arms as she reached the heart of the forest. The drone suddenly halted, hovering motionless above the treetops. Confused, Sarah slowed to a stop, glancing around nervously. What were they waiting for? Then, Orion's body began to glow brighter than ever, pulsating with an intense blue light. The drone's red lenses flickered, then dimmed completely. Slowly, one by one, they retreated back toward the ship, disappearing into its metallic hull. Breathing heavily, Sarah sank to her knees, clutching Orion close. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice trembling. Orion let out a soft chirp, nuzzling her cheek. Whatever he had done, it had worked, but for how long? Back at the village, the clan gathered around a roaring bonfire, discussing what had happened. Ethan, Mia, and the others who had helped distract the drones recounted their experience, their voices filled with awe and disbelief. The drones had been relentless, chasing them through the forest until abruptly stopping and retreating. It was like they lost interest, Ethan admitted, his tone grudging, as if something interfered. All eyes turned to Sarah as she stepped into the circle, Orion tucked safely under her arm. "It was Orion," she explained. "He did something I don't know how, but he stopped them." Murmurs rippled through the group, some expressing relief, others suspicion. Kyle Thompson frowned deeply. "So now we owe our lives to this creature. What happens when they come back?" "We prepare," Mia said firmly, stepping forward. "We've seen what Orion can do. He's not a threat, he's protection. And if we work together, we might stand a chance." Her words seemed to calm the tension, though not everyone looked convinced. Ethan crossed his arms, his jaw tight. "Fine," he said finally. "But next time, we fight our own battles. We can't rely on magic tricks forever." Sarah bit back a retort, choosing instead to focus on Orion. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew they would face them together. Over the next few days, life in Willowbrook settled into a fragile routine. the clan worked tirelessly to fortify their homes and set up watchtowers around the perimeter of the village. Ethan organized patrols, ensuring that no one ventured too far alone. Despite his earlier reluctance, he couldn't deny that Orion's presence had changed things for better or worse. Meanwhile, Sarah continued studying the ancient tree, determined to uncover its secrets. With Mia's help, she deciphered more of the symbols, discovering references to a race of beings known as the Luminae. According to the holograms, the Luminae were explorers, traveling the galaxy to form connections with other species. Orion, it seemed, was one of their ambassadors, a living bridge, designed to foster understanding between worlds. The realization filled Sarah with both pride and dread. If the Luminae were truly watching, then Earth's fate rested in the balance. Would they see humanity as allies or as obstacles? One night, as Sarah sat by the fire with Orion curled up beside her, she voiced her fears aloud. "What if we're not ready?" she asked softly. "What if we mess this up?" His head, his glowing eyes meeting hers. He let out a gentle hum, pressing closer to her side. It wasn't an answer, but it was enough. In that moment, Sarah realized that readiness wasn't about having all the answers. It was about being willing to try. As the flames danced in the hearth and the wind whispered through the trees, Sarah made a silent promise to herself. No matter what happened next, she would protect Orion and the hope he represented. Because sometimes, taking a leap of faith was the only way to reach the stars. The days that followed were a blur of preparation and tension. The clan worked tirelessly to fortify their village, building wooden barriers around the perimeter and setting up watchtowers at key points. Ethan Brooks led the efforts, his usual stern demeanor softened only slightly by the gravity of the situation. Though he still harbored doubts about Orion, even he couldn't deny that the strange pup had saved them from the drones. They needed to focus on staying safe and prepared. Sarah spent most of her time near the ancient tree, studying its glowing symbols and holograms with Mia's help. They had learned more about the Luminae, the mysterious race that seemed to have sent Orion, according to the messages displayed by the tree. The Luminae valued peace and connection, traveling across galaxies to share knowledge and build alliances. But there was also mention of other factions groups, who saw exploration as an opportunity for conquest rather than cooperation. It was these factions that worried Sarah the most. What if the drones weren't just looking for Orion? Asked Mia one evening as they sat beneath the tree. What if they were sent by someone else? Someone dangerous? Mia frowned thoughtfully, tracing one of the glowing symbols with her finger. It's possible, she admitted. But we can't let fear paralyze us. We need to trust that Orion knows what he's doing. Sarah glanced at Orion, who lay curled up nearby, his markings pulsing softly in the dim light. He looked so small and innocent, yet she knew he carried immense power within him. She reached out to stroke his fur, feeling a surge of gratitude and responsibility. Whatever happened next, it would fall on her to protect him. That night, as the clan gathered around the bonfire for their nightly meeting, Sarah noticed something unusual. The air felt heavy, charged with an energy she couldn't quite place. Even Orion seemed restless, pacing back and forth instead of lying down as he usually did. When she tried to calm him, he let out a low growl, his glowing eyes fixed on the sky. "Something's wrong," she whispered to Mia, her voice barely audible over the crackling flames. Before Mia could respond, a loud hum filled the air, louder and deeper than anything they had heard before. Everyone froze, their gazes snapping upward. Above them, the stars twinkled, as always, but then, slowly, a figure began to descend from the heavens. At first, it looked like a beam of light cutting through the darkness. As it drew closer, however, the shape became clearer. It was humanoid, tall and slender, with translucent skin that shimmered like water. Its eyes glowed the same blue-green hue as Orion's, and its body radiated a soft, ethereal glow. The clan watched in stunned silence as the being landed gracefully on the ground, its movements fluid and deliberate. For a moment, no one spoke. Without warning, the being raised a hand, and a wave of telepathic energy washed over the group. Images flooded their mind scenes of vast star systems, alien landscapes, and creatures unlike anything they had ever imagined. Among these images was Orion, standing proudly beside the being, surrounded by threads of light that connected him to countless worlds. When the vision faded, the being lowered its hand, its glowing eyes scanning the crowd. Finally, it spoke not with words, but directly into their thoughts. "I am Kale," the voice echoed in their minds, calm and steady. "Guardian of the Luminae, I come seeking our ambassador." The clan turned instinctively toward Sarah, who stood frozen, clutching Orion tightly. Slowly she stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "He's here," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "This is Orion." Kale's gaze shifted to Orion, and for a moment the two locked eyes. Soft hum resonated between them, growing louder until it filled the entire clearing. Then, just as suddenly, the sound faded, leaving behind an eerie silence. "Orion has fulfilled his purpose," Kale said, his tone neutral. "It is time for him to return." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "Return? No, you can't take him away." Kale tilted his head, studying her with an expression that was neither kind nor cruel. "You misunderstand. His mission was to forge a connection, a bridge between your world and ours. That connection has been established. Now, he must come home, but," Sarah stammered, struggling to find the right words. "He's part of us now. He's part of this clan. You can't just take him without giving us a choice." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Even Ethan, who had always been wary of Orion, stepped forward. "She's right," he said gruffly. "If he belongs here as much as you claim, then taking him away isn't fair." Kale paused, considering their words. Then, after a long moment, he nodded. "Very well," he said. "I will allow him to remain for now, but know this. Others may come seeking him. Not all share our desire for peace." His warning hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. Sarah swallowed hard, tightening her grip on Orion. "We'll protect him," she said firmly, "no matter what." Kale studied her for a moment longer, then extended his hand. A small crystal pendant materialized in his palm, glowing faintly with the same light as Orion's markings. "Take this," he said, "to allow you to communicate with him across distances. Should you ever need guidance or protection, use it." Sarah hesitated, then reached out to take the pendant. It was warm to the touch, humming softly against her skin. She slipped it around her neck, feeling its weight settle against her chest. "Thank you," she said quietly. Kale inclined his head, then turned his attention back to Orion. The two exchanged another hum, softer this time, almost like a farewell. Then, with a final glance at the clan, Kale raised his hand once more. In a flash of light, he vanished, leaving behind only the faint scent of ozone and the lingering echo of his presence. The clan remained silent for several moments, processing what had just happened. Finally, Mia broke the silence. "Oh," she said, her voice shaky but determined. "That settles it. We're not alone anymore." Ethan sighed deeply, rubbing a hand over his face. "Doesn't mean we're ready for this," he muttered. "But I suppose we don't have a choice." Sarah nodded, clutching the pendant tightly. "No, we don't, but we'll figure it out together." The group dispersed, returning to their homes and watchposts. Sarah stayed behind, sitting cross-legged in the clearing with Orion by her side. She stared up at the stars, her mind racing with questions. What would happen next? Would the Luminae truly honor their promise of peace? And what about the other factions, the ones Kale had warned them about? Orion pressed his head against her knee, letting out a soft hum. Sarah smiled faintly, scratching behind his ears. "Don't worry," she murmured. "We've got this. Whatever comes our way, we'll face it together." Above them, the stars twinkled brightly, their light stretching endlessly across the sky. For the first time in her life, Sarah felt a deep connection to something greater than herself. Universe was vast and unpredictable, but it was also full of possibilities. And with Orion by her side, she was ready to embrace them all. As the fire crackled softly in the distance and the wind whispered through the trees, Sarah made a silent vow. She would do whatever it took to protect Orion and the fragile bond he represented, because sometimes the smallest acts of courage could change the course of history. The days that followed Cale's visit were filled with a mix of wonder and unease. Life in Willowbrook had changed forever, and though the clan tried to return to their routines, the weight of what they had learned lingered in the air, the Lumines. The message was clear. Earth was now part of something much larger than itself. But with that knowledge came uncertainty and danger. Sarah spent most of her time with Orion, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The crystal pendant Cale had given her hung around her neck, its faint glow a constant reminder of the connection she now shared with Orion and, perhaps with the stars themselves. She often found herself staring at it, wondering what it truly is. Meant to be ambassadors for humanity. Could they really live up to such a responsibility? Mia Foster remained Sarah's closest ally, helping her piece together more information from the ancient tree. The holograms continued to display new images, revealing glimpses of other worlds and civilizations. Some were peaceful and advanced, while others seemed harsh and warlike. It became clear that not all beings in the galaxy shared the Lumines' vision of unity. The thought sent shivers down Sarah's spine. Ethan Brooks, meanwhile, focused on strengthening the clan's defenses. Though he still harbored doubts about Orion, he couldn't deny the reality of what they were facing. He organized training sessions, teaching everyone how to use makeshift weapons and set traps. "We might not be ready," he admitted during one meeting, "but we'll do whatever it takes to protect ourselves." Despite his efforts, tensions within the clan grew. Some members, like Kyle Thompson, argued that keeping Orion put them at risk. "What if those drones come back?" he demanded one evening as they gathered around the bonfire. "Or worse what? If someone stronger comes looking for him, you can't just hand him over," Sarah snapped, her voice rising. "He's not a thing to be traded or abandoned. He's part of us now." Kyle scowled but didn't argue further. Still, his words planted seeds of doubt in the minds of others. Even Mia noticed the growing divide. "We need to stay united," she told Sarah privately. "If we start turning on each other, we're finished."
Ow.
Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of leadership settle heavily on her shoulders. For so long, she had been an ordinary member of the clan, someone who preferred solitude and exploration. Now, she found herself at the center of something far bigger than she could have imagined. And yet, despite the challenges, she refused to give up. One night, as Sarah sat by the fire outside her cabin, she felt a sudden warmth against her chest. The crystal pendant began to glow brighter, pulsing in rhythm with Orion's markings. Startled, she looked down at him, only to find him staring intently at the sky. "What is it?" she whispered, standing up. Before Orion could respond, or chirp, or do whatever it was he did to communicate, the air around them shifted. A low rumble echoed through the forest, followed by a series of bright flashes in the distance. Without thinking, Sarah grabbed Orion and ran toward the source of the disturbance. When she reached the edge of the lake, her breath caught in her throat. Above the water hovered not one ship but three, massive and sleek, their metallic surfaces shimmering under the moonlight. Unlike Cale's vessel, these ships exuded an aura of menace, their sharp edges and dark hues making them look like predators circling their prey. Drones poured out of the ships, scanning the area with red lenses that glowed ominously. Sarah ducked behind a cluster of rocks, clutching Orion tightly. Her heart raced as she realized what was happening. These weren't emissaries of peace, they were hunters. "Stay quiet," she murmured to Orion, though she doubted he needed the reminder. His body tensed beside hers, his glowing eyes fixed on the drones. From the village, shouts erupted as the clan scrambled to defend themselves. Ethan and several others emerged from the trees, wielding spears and torches. They charged at the drones, driving them back momentarily, but it was clear they were outnumbered. The machines moved with precision, firing beams of light that knocked people off their feet. Sarah knew they couldn't fight like this, not without help. Gripping the crystal pendant, she closed her eyes and focused on the warmth radiating from it. "Cale," she whispered desperately. "If you can hear me, please, we need your help." For a moment, nothing happened. Then a soft hum filled the air, growing louder until it drowned out the chaos around them. A beam of light shot down from the sky, illuminating the lake in a brilliant glow. When the light faded, Kale stood before them, his translucent form shimmering like liquid starlight. The drones froze mid-air, their red lenses flickering uncertainly. Kale raised a hand, and the ships above the lake let out a deafening roar before ascending into the heavens, disappearing as quickly as they had arrived. Silence fell over the clearing as the clan stared in awe at Kale. Slowly, he turned to face Sarah, his glowing eyes locking onto hers. "You summoned me," he said, his telepathic voice calm but firm. "Why?" "They came for Orion," Sarah replied, her voice trembling. "They weren't like you. They wanted to hurt him, to hurt us." Kale nodded gravely. "I feared this might happen. There are factions among the stars who see connection as weakness. They will stop at nothing to destroy it." "What do we do?" Sarah asked, clutching Orion closer. "How do we fight them?" "You cannot," Kale said. "Simply, but you can prepare. The Luminae will guide you, but only if you remain united. Trust in Orion, trust in yourselves." With that, Kale extended his hand once more, conjuring another object, a small sphere made of the same glowing material as the pendant. He handed it to Sarah. "This will allow you to call upon us when the time is right. Use it wisely." Before anyone could ask more questions, Kale vanished in a flash of light, leaving the clan to process what had just happened. Ethan approached Sarah cautiously, his expression unreadable. He said gruffly, "Looks like we've got our work cut out for us." Sarah nodded, holding the sphere tightly. "Yeah, but we'll get through this together." In the weeks that followed, the clan worked harder than ever to prepare for the unknown. Under Kale's guidance, they built better defenses and learned to use the tools he had provided. The ancient tree continued to reveal new insights, helping them understand the vastness of the universe and their place within it. Orion remained at Sarah's side, his bond with her stronger than ever. Through the crystal pendant, she could feel his presence even when they were apart, a comforting reminder that they were never truly alone. Though fear still lingered in the hearts of many, there was also hope. The clan had faced unimaginable challenges and survived. Together, they had forged a connection with something greater than themselves, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, courage and unity could prevail. As Sarah stood beneath the stars one night, gazing at the pendant around her neck, she felt a deep sense of purpose. Whatever lay ahead, she knew they would face it together, not just as a clan, but as ambassadors for humanity. And somewhere out there, among the countless stars, Orion's kind watched over them, waiting to see what the future held above her. The constellations twinkled brightly, their light stretching endlessly across the sky. For the first time in her life, Sarah felt truly connected, not just to the earth beneath her feet, but to the infinite possibilities beyond.